Welcome to Midnight Stories, where the tales never end. Dive into a world filled with mystery, drama, and heart-pounding suspense. If you love stories that keep you guessing, please subscribe to our channel so we can continue this journey together. Imagine sailing into the frozen Arctic with 128 brave men, two of the most advanced ships ever built, enough food to survive for years, and a mission that could change history forever. Then, silence. No letters. No survivors. No explanation. When rescue teams finally discovered traces of the expedition years later, they found abandoned ships, frozen graves, mysterious notes, and evidence suggesting that the crew had been driven to an unimaginable fate. This is not just a story about exploration. It is one of history's greatest mysteries. This is the Lost Franklin Expedition. Part 1. The Dream of the Northwest Passage. In the early 19th century, the Arctic remained one of Earth's last unexplored frontiers. European nations believed that somewhere through the maze of frozen islands north of Canada lay a shortcut connecting the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. Finding this route, the legendary Northwest Passage would transform global trade forever. Many explorers tried. Many failed. Some never returned. But Britain refused to give up. They decided to launch their greatest expedition yet. Leading it would be one of the Royal Navy's most respected officers, Sir John Franklin. At 59 years old, Franklin was considered experienced, calm, and courageous. Although he had survived previous Arctic disasters, no one imagined that his final voyage would become history's most famous disappearance. Two powerful ships were prepared, HMS Erebus and HMS Terror. Ironically, the names themselves sounded like a warning. Both vessels had recently served in Antarctica. Their hulls were reinforced with thick iron plates. Steam engines had been installed. Heating systems warmed the cabins. They carried libraries filled with books, musical instruments, scientific equipment, 3 years' worth of preserved food. Everything suggested this expedition would succeed where others had failed. In May 1845, the ships left England. Families waved goodbye. Crowds cheered from the docks. No one knew. They were witnessing the last time most of those sailors would ever be seen alive. Part 2. Into the Frozen World. After stopping briefly in Greenland to gather supplies, the expedition entered the Arctic Ocean. 2 whaling ships spotted Franklin's expedition in late July 1845. The crews exchanged friendly greetings. The weather seemed favorable. Everyone appeared healthy. That was the last confirmed sighting. After disappearing into the icy wilderness, nothing. Weeks became months. Months became years. Back in Britain, families waited anxiously. Letters never arrived. The Admiralty remained confident. Franklin had enough supplies. Perhaps the expedition was simply wintering in the Arctic. But as time passed, Hope slowly turned into fear. By 1848, the British government admitted something had gone terribly wrong. They launched one rescue mission, then another, then another. Eventually, more than 30 expeditions searched the Arctic. Ironically, the search for Franklin mapped more of the Canadian Arctic than Franklin himself ever did. Yet, there was still no sign of the missing ships, only endless silence. Part 3. The First Clues. Years later, rescue teams finally began discovering fragments of the mystery. On a tiny island called Beachy Island, they found 3 graves, young sailors, perfectly preserved beneath the frozen ground. Their names were carefully carved into wooden markers: John Torrington, William Brain, John Hartnell. They had died during the expedition's very first winter. But why? The graves raised more questions than answers. Nearby, investigators discovered abandoned camps, food tins, discarded equipment, yet no sign of the remaining crew. Then, in 1859, a rescue expedition uncovered what would become one of history's most important handwritten notes, hidden inside a stone cairn. The first message, written in 1847, sounded optimistic. All is well. The ships were trapped in ice, but everyone was alive. Then, around the edges of the same paper, another message had been added nearly a year later. Its tone was completely different. Sir John Franklin was dead. 24 officers and sailors had already died. The ships had been trapped for nearly 2 years. The surviving 105 men had abandoned both vessels. Their destination, the Canadian mainland, over 1,000 kilometers away, on foot, across one of the harshest environments on Earth. Part 4. The Long March. Imagine dragging heavy sledges across endless sea ice. No roads, no maps, temperatures below -40 degrees, little food, constant exhaustion. That was the impossible journey Franklin's surviving crew attempted. Later searches discovered skeletons scattered across the landscape. Some still lay beside sledges loaded with books, silver plates, cooking equipment, even fine dining utensils. Why carry silver instead of extra food? Perhaps they still believed rescue would arrive. Perhaps they simply couldn't abandon the traditions of naval life. But every unnecessary kilogram made survival even harder. As months passed, the Arctic consumed them one by one. Some collapsed from starvation, others from disease, others simply vanished into the frozen wilderness. None reached safety. Part 5. A Dark Secret. Then came the most disturbing discovery of all. Inuit hunters who had encountered the final survivors told rescuers shocking stories. They described starving British sailors wandering across the ice, some barely able to walk, others pulling empty boats over frozen land. Even more horrifying, The Inuit claimed evidence suggested cannibalism. For decades, Victorian Britain rejected the idea. British naval officers eating one another? Impossible. The Empire refused to believe it. But over a century later, modern forensic science examined bones recovered from the Arctic. Scientists found unmistakable cut marks. Bones had been broken apart. Marrow had been extracted. Exactly as starving humans process animal bones for food. The evidence became undeniable. The expedition had descended into absolute desperation. Part 6. Solving the Mystery. For generations, historians wondered what truly destroyed Franklin's expedition. The answer appears to be a combination of disasters. The ships became trapped in unusually heavy sea ice, unable to move. Winter after winter, food supplies slowly ran out. Many preserved food cans had been sealed poorly. Some may have spoiled. Researchers also discovered dangerous levels of lead in crew remains. Lead poisoning may have weakened the sailors, making them vulnerable to illness, scurvy, starvation, exhaustion, freezing temperatures. Every problem made the next one worse. Eventually, there was no escape, only survival, and finally, death. Part 7. The Ship's Return. For more than 160 years, the locations of HMS Erebus and HMS Terror remained unknown. Many believed they would never be found. Then, in 2014, Canadian researchers made an extraordinary discovery. Deep beneath Arctic waters, they located HMS Erebus, almost perfectly preserved. 2 years later, HMS Terror was also found. Even more astonishingly, it appeared almost untouched. Cabins, furniture, windows, artifacts. The freezing Arctic had preserved history beneath the sea. Divers continue exploring the wrecks today. Each expedition reveals new clues, new objects, new secrets. Perhaps one day, the ships themselves will finally tell the complete story. The Franklin expedition began as a mission to conquer one of Earth's last great frontiers. Instead, it became a reminder that nature is stronger than even the greatest technology. The men who sailed aboard Erebus and Terror never reached their destination, but their disappearance inspired decades of exploration, expanded our knowledge of the Arctic, and created one of history's greatest mysteries. Even now, as scientists continue studying the wrecks beneath the frozen sea, the story is still unfolding. Some mysteries refuse to stay buried forever, and perhaps the Arctic still has one final secret left to reveal. If you enjoyed this true historical mystery, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another incredible story from history's darkest mysteries. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.